This year, Formula 1 will be heading to 23 different racetracks around the world. But to make way for the new circuits such as Jeddah and Miami, we've had to say goodbye to several other tracks. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the tracks we have lost from 2010 to 2022, such as Sepang and Buddh, as well as circuits like Hanoi that failed to materialise. One of the first tracks to be dropped from the F1 calendar in the 2010s was Valencia. The first race meeting on the street circuit was held in August 2008, with Felipe Massa winning the European Grand Prix. Valencia appeared on the calendar for 4 consecutive years, but after the 2012 Grand Prix, it was dropped after a deal fell through to alternate the street circuit with Catalonia in Barcelona to host the Spanish Grand Prix. Korea International Circuit was the host of the Korean Grand Prix from 2010 to 2013. Fernando Alonso won the inaugural Grand Prix before Sebastian Vettel won the following 3 events. The track initially had a 7-year contract, with an option to extend the race until 2021, but the race was only held until 2013. A preliminary calendar for the 2014 and 2015 seasons listed a provisional race for the Korean GP, but both races were eventually omitted on the final calendars. According to The Independent, the Korean Grand Prix was dropped after complaints about poor facilities and low attendance at the track. Buddh International Circuit first hosted the annual Indian Grand Prix in October 2011. Sebastian Vettel won all 3 events. However, the GP was suspended for 2014 and subsequently cancelled due to a reported tax dispute with the government of Uttar Pradesh, the state where the circuit is located. Sepang hosted the Formula 1 Malaysian Grand Prix for 18 years. Its maiden event was back in 1999, after the government launched a series of major infrastructure projects aimed at boosting the country's reputation. The first Grand Prix was a huge success, notably due to Michael Schumacher and Eddie Irvine's battles, and the fact that only half of the 22-car field actually managed to finish. But in October 2016, it was suggested the Sepang circuit may be dropped from the Formula 1 calendar. Rumours hinted at dwindling ticket sales as Malaysia struggled against the more glamorous nighttime event of Singapore. And in April 2017, Malaysia's Prime Minister said that that year's Grand Prix would be the last. In a statement, he said, "The Cabinet has agreed to end the contract for hosting the Formula 1 race starting 2018 after considering lowering returns to the country compared to the cost of hosting the championships." The Hockenheim Circuit hosted the German Grand Prix for the first time in 1970, before becoming a permanent fixture on the calendar in 1977. From 1977 to 2006, the Hockenheimring enjoyed a spell as the German Grand Prix's host, with the only exception being in 1985, when the race was held at the Nürburgring. From 2007 to 2014, the Nürburgring and the Hockenheimring alternated hosting the event. However, the Hockenheimring took control of the reins again in 2016, 2018 and 2019. The first official Formula 1 Grand Prix hosted at the Nürburgring was in 1951. Except for a few years, the Nürburgring almost played sole host to the German Grand Prix, but in 1977 it was replaced by the fast, flat Hockenheim circuit. The Nürburgring returned to the F1 calendar in 1984 and hosted the European Grand Prix several times. Although instead of the historic Nordschleife being used, the new Grand Prix track was utilised. In 2008, Valencia picked up European Grand Prix hosting rights, leading to the aforementioned deal between the Nürburgring and Hockenheimring to alternate the German Grand Prix. But in 2014, the new owners of the Nürburgring were unable to secure a deal to continue hosting the German GP, so the 2015 and 2017 races at the circuit were cancelled. However, in July 2020, it was announced that after 7 years, the track would return to the Formula 1 calendar, following circuit complications due to COVID-19. The race was called the Eifel Grand Prix in honour of the nearby mountain range. The disrupted year of 2020 also saw the likes of Mugello and Bahrain's outer circuit host F1 Grand Prix for 1 year, while the Algarve International Circuit held the Portuguese Grand Prix for 2 years. One of the more popular additions to the calendar, in light of other races being cancelled due to the pandemic, was the return of Istanbul Park. Istanbul had been part of the Formula 1 World Championship between 2005 and 2011. But in 2011, it was announced that the Turkish Grand Prix would not be on the calendar from 2012 due to a lack of agreement on the annual cost. The race organisers claimed that the hosting fee was too high, while F1 chief Bernie Ecclestone blamed poor promotion for the race's lack of profitability. Two other important circuits to mention that were provisionally scheduled on the F1 calendar are Port Imperial Street Circuit in New Jersey and Hanoi Circuit in Vietnam. The Port Imperial Street Circuit was first announced in October 2011 and was expected to host the Grand Prix of America in 2013. German designer Hermann Tilke was brought in to design the track, and in 2012, Sebastian Vettel and David Coulthard did test runs along the proposed route. But after repeatedly being added then removed from F1 provisional calendars, the circuit and the Grand Prix concept was dropped completely in 2016. Reported reasons for the circuit's failure have been contested, but it appears a contractual dispute is likely to be the main cause. The Hanoi Circuit, scheduled to host the Vietnamese Grand Prix, also suffered a similar fate. Construction of the circuit was completed in February 2020, with the Vietnamese Grand Prix due to take place in April of that year. But it was initially postponed and later cancelled due to the pandemic. However, things went from bad to worse as the Grand Prix was dropped again for 2021, following the arrest on corruption charges of a key official responsible for the race in Hanoi. And after being omitted from the 2022 calendar, doubts have been raised as to whether the race will ever take place. Out of all the circuits mentioned, are there any that you would like to see return to Formula 1? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content in the future. Until next time.